All right, welcome back. This is part 2 of our 2-part series for Berkeley NYC CMAT 617 Spring Edition. And in our first part, we created our Pac-Man that is chomping on this little feedback circle. So what we want to do is overlay this over our little audio field. So we are going to create this little nodal network and then put the Pac-Man on top of it. So let's go back over here, and what we're going to do is start off by adding a container. So double click again, go into comp, and then go into base, and we're going to select this as audio field. And again, we talked about textures in our week 2 here, but we are going to also do some channel operators next week. So this is kind of a preview of parsing some audio and doing some different things. So first off, what we're going to do is we are going to go into our channel operator, and we're going to add a audio file in. So audio file in is the default of a TouchDesigner selection that we will listen to in a second. So if we want to listen to that, I'm going to go to audio device out, and I am going to, because I have a little bit of a recording studio here, I'm going to turn my volume way down. I'm going to select my audio device in here, and then I am going to, let's see, bypass this and then connect it. And when I turn it on, we can hear it. And there's always that squeak every time I do it through my setup. It's lovely. But now you can hear what the default file is, right? I'm going to turn that down so I don't have to listen to it the whole time, but we are going to make something that's actually reacting to that music, okay? So a couple things. So first, we're going to create a little bit of a chain here, and I can, again, right click on my mouse, and I can add, and the first thing I'm going to do is add an envelope. And what I'm doing here is I am just doing some normalization, okay? So I'm going to take this envelope, and I'm going to add a math to it. And I'm going to connect this node, and we have two things going on, right? So we have our 2 channels here, our 2 channels for our envelope, and they're bridging it into the math that is actually making it 4 channels because we are doubling the signal. But I'm going to take this envelope, and I'm going to take this and turn this to 1, and I'm going to turn this to maximum values for our envelope bounds. And then in our math, I'm going to go to what's just this combine chops in our parameters field over here, and I'm going to go to divide, right? So now I am taking this and normalizing this out. And you can see of how this spectrum is looking over there, and like what this spectrum looks like. Obviously 2 different things, right? So this is going to kind of give us what we want when we're kind of going to be changing this noise. And so we have this, and now what we're going to add to this is we are going to add a an audio parametric EQ. And then we are going to add a audio spectrum. We are going to then add a resample. We're going to connect all these things, and then we're going to add a rename. And you'll see why in a second. And so now we need to start adjusting these parameters a little bit in here. So we have our math. We already made this adjustment of our normalization. And in here, I am going to change this because I want to boost a little bit of this level. So in this parametric EQ, I'm just going to boost by 10 dB, let's say 5,000 hertz. And so it's just, you can see right now, I'm just like gaining up this little section because I just want to attenuate that portion of the spectrum field, right? So we have this, we're doing this, and we boosted this, and we're going to go over here, and we're going to actually change this visualization, our FFT size. We're going to change it just to 16 by 384, 16, 384, okay? So now it's kind of changing. If you looked at this, what's going on here, it's just like how it's kind of like compressing a little bit of our audio spectrum. So it's giving it a nice, more slow evenness to it instead of it going like all haywire. Okay, so we're going to go into our resample now. And this is where we're going to adjust some things. So in our common tab, we're going to turn off time slice, bringing our spectrum back, right? And in our resample, we are going to switch from our method of new rate, sample time range to new rate, new interval. And this is where we are going to actually adjust some things. So we're adjusting where it is in the field, what our seconds is per se, but we want to change this seconds to samples. So we're going to change both these to samples. And I'm going to say this n, let's say 5,000, right? So we want now we're creating 5,000 samples in this. We've resampled it. And then we're going from there, right? In our rename, because we are going to be switching this into a texture operator, because we are obviously talking about textures in this past week, and we're going to be moving into channel operators, but we're going to change this from these channel 1 and channel 2, just from a cleanliness standpoint, to an R and a G. And now we have our R and G values because we're going to be using both of those, okay? So now we get to the point where, again, a 3-button mouse is always a benefit here. But we are going to hover over this outlet, and we're going to right-click. And we are going to select Chop 2, okay? So now this is basically bridging a channel operator to a texture operator. And the only way, because these can't connect to each other, there's no node that connects to it, we have to look at this way, okay? So now we are going to change this to R and G, right? So we have our field, and we have this very thin pixel line of this, right? So, but we want to expand that, and like how I did in the demonstration, and show you how to do that. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to use a noise, and you'll see we use noise all over the place here. It's a lot of fun, and gotta love a noise, but we're going to change this period of the noise to 10 to kind of smooth it out a little bit. And you can see within this, like, you know, this is what our noise level is, and 10 is just giving it kind of a nice warm spectrum, or like, you know, it's just giving it a better field. So it's really just kind of like focusing out on it, or focusing in and things like that, but it is noise. So we're going to go from there, right? And we're going to change our noise common to the pixel format. We are going to change to 32-bit float RGB. So we didn't talk about this in class, but there's all these different formats of what values you're picking, and 32-bit float is a float value compared to an integer value. So you, instead of being like 1, 2, you have 1 and all the numbers in between 2. So 1.1, 1.123, you know, different things like that. So float versus integer, and we can talk more about that. But that is one of the things we're going to do, right? So now we're going to take these two, and we're going to add a level on the back end of this, and we are going to change in our level, in our output resolution, we are going to select custom resolution, and we're going to change this to match what we did with our Pac-Man, is to 1280 by 720. Okay, and now we have to bridge these two together. So we are going to go into a composite, and we are going to take these nodes and put them on top of each other, and there we have a little audio spectrum right here. So this is in monochrome mode. So we're going to go into our noise, and we're going to turn off monochrome to give us a little bit of our coloring. And we really don't need this either. So we'll have that selection right there, right? So now you can see if we turn our little handy dandy music back on, you can see that our audio is moving our noise, right? And the cool thing about this is like how we did in our our example with the Pac-Man is we can use absolute time again. So we're going to go into our transform. Or, you know, we can do this in a different way. We're just going to do a transform on the back end of this. And so we're going to put a transform here. And in our translate, we are going to move this with absolute time. So ABS, capital T, cap. So you just have to, this is the one thing you just want to be cognizant of if this isn't working for you, is it's ABS, lowercase, capital T, lowercase, IME dot seconds. And this is the power of writing expressions, is then I can do math behind this, right? So I'm going to take this and I'm going to do times 0.2. And so now it's transforming this like we saw in the Pac-Man. So what we need to do is we need to take this and go to repeat. And now we're moving our field over our transport, right? And you can do these different settings here. So we can have mirror, so it's coming in and out and doesn't have that like, you know, that hard line. So there we have it. So we have these colors that are being, you know, chopped, and we have our level over here that is basically transforming this into our fields. And oh, one thing I did, I switched pixel format to 32-bit float on this again. We have our noise over here. We have this at 2560. We can change this to 1280 by 720. But this is like massively stretching it again. So, you know, it's just things to play around with, right? So depending on what you want to do, but let's put this back where we want is 1280 by 720. And we have our little field here, but who likes these colors? So we're doing some different things to change these colors, but now we have to like switch around, and what do we want to look at? What are the colors we want to look at? You know, how is this happening? So these are where we want to change some of these parameters. And this is always the tricky thing, right? Because I have this, that I'm chopping this data for the red and the green from our chop 2 into this composition. So that top part is overlaying over the composition. So there's a couple ways. You saw I just did swap order operation. So I'm actually putting this noise level on top of it, which is definitely the colors that I want. But it depends on how you connect things. So let's say we redo this and we add our composition again. And this is just something you'll learn of like how you connect things. But if we do our composition, we put this on first, and then we select this. Then it's going to be, you know, compositing it over it. And then we select it like this, right? And if we went to an over, it's doing this. It's, you know, everything is doing a certain way, but it's also like it's kind of tricked itself again because it's using this as the output of like our line, right? So I don't want that. So because I'm using this as kind of a trick to change this one pixel into something else, I'm going to leave it like how I had it before. And it's actually tricking the resolution to a certain way, right? Because this is one of the things we talked about in class too, is like how you can be efficient with networks. And this is being more efficient because it's not taking the spectrum and then pushing it way out, okay? So we have this going here, and this kind of looks like what our example was to a certain level, but we want to change some colors. So what we can do is we're going to add a lookup. And this is, again, part of the portion of this class within talking about textures is we're changing things, right? So we're changing things all around. So if we go to a lookup, we add this in. We connect this, and it's going to give us this thing because it's saying, we need a second input. What is that? So I'm going to add a ramp, and this is another common thing within TouchDesigner to use. Now we're going to take this and we're going to look up these colors based on this ramp color, okay? So in here, I'm going to select these colors, and instead of being black, I'm going to take this and I'm going to use, like, let's say purple. So my hue, sat, val, alpha, all those different things are alpha. Now I'm going to change this and I'm going to bring this into a purple. And now I have like some other colors that I'm changing these things, right? Because this is a noise field going from a chop data. And so now we're like bringing in some other colors. So I can keep moving forward this and then bring in like, let's say a blue. I can do, let's say a red, right? And I can do a pink. I'm trying to think of like 80 colors or teal colors. Maybe this blue is really like a teal, right? And because we're doing a dodge color, this is also like you're playing with like how these colors look, and because of the composition is also a dodge. So it's like, what are we trying to achieve here, right? So you're kind of, because your comp over here is doing something else, we have to think about like, what is this? Okay. And I was doing a dodge color, but if I do a divide, that's going to be different. If I do a darker color, that's going to be different. If I'm doing a different, that's going to be different. So I'm using dodge, and so I'm dodging these colors in this composition from these two colors. So it's just being like color aware of, again, what we're trying to do. So you just have to kind of play around with colors to what you're trying to achieve from a color standpoint and where it's sitting in that spectrum, right? So that is just part of this process of like trying to dial some different things in to saying, okay, what am I trying to achieve here? What am I trying to achieve? And this is the question I ask myself in life all the time, right? So that is part of it, right? So this is something that you're just going to have to play around with to find different types of colors and things that you want and what your desired outcome is. And there's that's the thing about TouchDesigner too, is there's like multiple ways to do 100 different things. So again, it's just playing around with what you're trying to achieve. Okay. But let's see, we were going for this kind of like, again, 80s Pac-Man-ish vibe. So I'm just going to change a little bit of this, bring in some colors that I know would kind of represent, I think, what I want going on there. Okay. In our transform too, if you see, if we go back to repeat, it's giving us these hard lines. So I'm just going to go back and keep it as this mirror, right? And then again, you can play around with these settings and find, again, something that is going to be representative of what you're looking for. And this is kind of cool, so we'll keep this one, okay? At the back end of this, we're going to add a level, and this is also going to give us control over that color spectrum, right? And in our level of our RGBs, we can lower a certain level of color. We can like bring out some of the greens. So again, we're just in textures. We're in top lands here. We're just changing things up, okay? So now we're going to select our out. And we have kind of this little audio spectrum reactive thing that's based off of noise, right? How fun is that? Okay, so we have these two pieces. Now we go back here, and just like we did before in our little composite, is we want to add these on top of each other like I did in the example. So two things. One thing that I want to do is kind of show you guys a little bit about the palette. And in the palette, there's all these different things that you can select in here. And I'm going to go to image filters, and I'm going to go to a radial blur. And this is going to, without getting into it, if we go inside this node, you can see we're doing some GLSL in here. But without like doing that right now and showing you how that works, we're just going to use this pre-made comp that they have from the palettes. And we are going to then bring the Pac-Man into this, right? So it's already custom, and it's given this like little blur to our little Pac-Man. And I want to change that, right? So I want my center point, which is 0, 0. I want to change this to like 0.75. So I'm going to have this like out the back end. And I'm going to bring up the strength on this to kind of give it like almost this weird, like three-dimensional type of look. And I can adjust my wet dry. So it's given this like hazy type of Pac-Man thing. Let's see if I change this to 0.5. Right now it's kind of going straight off. I can have this so it's, again, it's like we already have this feedback going with this, so it's just giving a little bit of more dimension of something that looks so like correct and accurate to have like, now it's also giving this 3D, you know, look to it, right? So that's great. So what we're going to do now, we're going to take these and we're going to composite these to each other. So bring our composite back and we're going to add our Pac-Man, because that's going to be on the top, and we're going to put it over this audio reactive field. Right, and you can see now we have creating all kinds of different things. So you can create something that you want that looks like this. You can do what was intended of having something like this. But you can see this is also doing our little transform that we had, because we had a black image onto it. Right, so again, you're playing around with the different things, and there's ways that we could adjust how we were masking that back section, but I'm just going to use this. This is kind of the maximum, is kind of what I was looking for, and we can go inside our node too and adjust the level and all different types of things, right? But that's what we have. So this is our outcome that we made. So our little 1980s Pac-Man that is eating the dots, that has a little noise field, or a little audio reactiveness behind it. We're going to go in here, we're going to turn it on. And we can see that that is also adjusting that based on the spectrum of 5,000 hertz. So those are numbers you can play around with. So this concludes part 2. And that is it.